that time, and we'll see how much of it Nintendo has actually learned.
We've got another
question.
Yes.
Yeah, since you mentioned the new Zelda game, I've fallen off the radar and haven't been paying much attention. Have they released anything since the concept art at E3 last year? So what makes you think there's really going to be a Zelda this
Because
year?
it's time. Schedules.
Big Mario's coming out in June.
Yeah.
That means something's got to come out.
They need
in
something
October.
for Q4, and I'm surprised that they're actually putting so much out in the summer. It boggles my mind that there's going to be a 30-day window where, like, Sin and Punishment, Mario Galaxy, and Metroid.
Oh,
come out.
Metroid.
Yeah, everything's coming
That
out.
freaks me out. I think one of them has to get delayed.
Metroid might get delayed a month or two.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the holiday
But clearly
game,
they
though.
don't have a holiday game yet.
Right.
So.
It will be Zelda. I can almost guarantee you. And again, it has been 4 years since Zelda came
Yeah,
out. So
it's time.
Nintendo is a very secretive company. So the fact that we haven't heard much about that game doesn't mean it's not close to being finished. And I can almost guarantee it will be. It will be at E3
I think,
for
honestly,
sure.
they probably don't want to say anything about it because last time they said Twilight Princess was coming out, it got delayed like 2 years to move it over to the Wii.
Yeah, which was.
I mean,
And
that's
it
why
was just
I
kind of
asked
an
the
embarrassment
question.
for them
Yeah.
on the corporate level that they had to admit that they were wrong. So they probably just don't want to tell anyone anything until they know they're right.
Right, Nintendo certainly does not like delaying games, and if you look at the pattern over the past 10 years or so, the number of delays in Nintendo games has gone way down, and part of that's because they don't announce games
Until they're
as
ready.
far out anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
they've become very, very secretive. Just
Right.
probably over the past 3 or 4 years,
Yeah, well-
they've locked down completely. They
like-
just really don't give much
They
details
don't
on it all.
announce it now unless it's 90% completed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at something like Metroid Dread, which everyone knows existed and will probably never come out now, they would never let something like that happen again.
Right.
Or you'll have something like, well, was it Punch Out they announced? What 6 months for it was ready to come out? Or
Oh, yeah,
Excitebot
it was
they
crazy.
apparently never announced.
Yeah, Excitebots basically wasn't announced. They just kind of shat it out
Yeah.
on the marketplace. But the reason, and I predicted this quite a while ago, that at the beginning of the year I predicted that we would get Mario in roughly the May or June zone, and then
Sure enough.
Metroid in July or August. And the reason that I put that out there is that both of those games were shown at E3 last year. Nintendo has a standing policy that they stick to pretty well, that they do not show games at E3 unless they're planning to release them before the next E3.
Yeah.
So I knew, we knew those games were coming out in 2009 when they showed them last year, but I knew they would be out in the first half, roughly, of 2010, because otherwise they wouldn't have shown them.
Yeah.
They just hold their cards very close to the chest.
But just speaking of, Mario and Zelda, and you even mentioned how the people who work on the Wii now are the people who made, I think you said, the Star Tropics games. I was just curious why they don't do more of those, more of their first-party titles, like the Star Tropics. Haven't seen a Star Fox in a few years, Kid Icarus, stuff like that. I think with the Wii, you could make a really good game with those.
Yeah,
Some
you
of
definitely
those.
could.
I agree.
Star Fox, I think they kind of let that one fall.
I mean,
to
this franchise has been fizzling since the second game.
Well, Star Fox as a franchise has been poisoned by some really bad games that were developed by companies who aren't named Nintendo, and it's Nintendo's responsibility because they gave the franchise over to those people, and then they didn't supervise them well enough. And I'm talking about Rare and Namco and people like that. I'm not talking about Q games. I think they made the best Star Fox in the past 10 years.
I think as far as like the Star Tropics games and stuff, I mean, I think that in the recent years you've really seen Nintendo step down from publishing a lot of their niche hardcore titles. Like the smaller franchises have really not shown up as often.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo is a busy company, and a lot of their developers have moved over to make things like Wii Sports and Wii Fit and Wii Music. And those games, because they are very new, they take a lot of developers to put them together. They're very conceptual. They're working with controls that no one's ever done before. So they may seem like simple games. That doesn't mean they're simple to develop.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever done software development will know that the smoother an interface is, the easier a program is for a person to use, the more difficult it was to put it together. And I think you can address a lot of Nintendo's pipeline issues to that. They're trying to develop new interfaces and new ways of playing games. That's very intensive in development.
Yeah, I mean, how many of their teams that would normally be making actual games are probably just trying to work out control mechanisms, and they end up making tech demos and stuff that never really make it out. But someone's got to make that tech demo, otherwise no one knows how to make an actual game.
Nintendo actually used to show a lot of their tech demos
Yeah, they used to show them all the time.
at trade shows like E3 and TGS. They would show things like Stage Debut.
Now they're just in the
Kirby
early
Tilt and
world.
Tumble, games that never came out.
100 Marios, that game.
Oh,
was
yeah,
gonna
right.
come
Well, that
out.
game
Well, it
became
turned into
Pikmin,
right?
yeah.
Right, and just one of the things about Nintendo is that a lot of their development power goes into making these experiments and tech demos that are never released.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the ideas from those, they're kind of like concept cars. They feed into games that are eventually released, or they're combined and shifted around, and they add characters on
It's like
them.
the opposite of Google, where they just develop millions of random things and put them all out there and
Right.
hope that something sticks.
And one of the consequences of that is that their pipeline or their output, it seems lower than it should be.
Yeah.
And it's a consequence of Nintendo being a very innovative company. They don't want to release the same thing over and over again, and because of that, their games don't come out as fast because it's faster to release the same thing over and over again.
And they do that on the hardware side as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're not just innovating on the software side. They're also going through iterations of hardware constantly.
To be a bit pessimistic here, they're also a massively cost-benefit analysis-driven company.
Oh yeah, completely.
And they make games that they know are going to sell millions of copies. They make hardware, honestly, on the cheap a little bit, just so they can try to basically drive their resources.
Yeah, if they've got a game that
effective mechanisms.
if they've got a game that they think might be good, and they still want to make it, they don't pour a ton of money into it. Something like Excitebots is a great example where they put it out there, but they basically just put it out there. They didn't put any money behind it because they weren't confident enough in it, so they just threw it out there.
Excitebots and Punch-Out are both interesting examples because Nintendo outsourced development for both of their games.
Right.
Which is kind of what they seem to do with their smaller franchises now.
Yeah, they do a lot of
They
that
just
now.
basically said, well, you can, or they do it with the Kirby franchise right now on the DS.
Give it to
And
Namco.
they'll do a lot of spin-offs like Mario Super Strikers. Like it's
Yeah.
a Mario game, but it's developed by who's it? Next Level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like for their internal games, they set the bar very, very high now.
It's true. Yeah, I think Punch-Out and Excitebots is a really interesting pair to look at because they came out very close to each other. They were both developed by outside companies and published through Nintendo and leveraged on. So Excitebots is kind of leveraged on Excitebike. But it's really interesting. You can just look at the way those games were launched and see what Nintendo thought of them. Because Punch-Out was very heavily promoted, had TV commercials, announced, and had game demos, and there was a big focus put on that. Whereas Excitebots, literally just dumped.
It appeared.
Dumped out there. A month later, it's $5, and you can't even find it anymore. And the sad thing is, I think they're both very, very good games. Personally, I actually prefer Excitebots among those two. I think it's actually a better game.
And I think the decision wasn't necessarily made on the quality of the game. I think it was made because they knew the Punch-Out would sell a ton of copies.
It's a marketing decision.
Yeah, Punch-Out is a very easy game to sell because it hasn't played Punch-Out at this point in their life.
Yeah.
It's got so much power behind it that a lot of people played Excitebike, but I would wager that a lot more people played the original Punch-Out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no question.
So anyway, let's move on because I want everybody who wants to get a question.
Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering, I know there's been minimal information out about the Nintendo 3DS, but I mean, the only things that pretty much been confirmed is going to be 2 screens and a touch screen and 3D. I was just wondering what your general thoughts were, what you kind of expect. I'm guessing DSiWare is going to come back, and just general.
We could have done a whole panel.
I
have some
a month ago.
on 3DS. I think it's very interesting that they announced the 3DS right as the XL is about to come out.
It's not even out in America.
Yeah,
They've
it's
already
just
announced
about
its
to.
replacement.
That is so Nintendo. It's the Game Boy Micro all over again. And
Only backwards.
and bigger. But no, I think the 3DS. They say that they're going to do 3D, but not make you wear glasses, which I think is really good because wearing glasses would be bad. And I wasn't sure how they were going to do it, but I actually recently saw on Engadget this really cheap 3D tablet. It creates 3D spontaneously, and it's a very small screen, and it's only going to be like $100. So it's very cheap, on-the-fly 3D technology.
Yeah,
I think that because here's the thing: it's not going to be some next level shit that you've never seen before. It's going to be something that you've already seen repurposed.
It's going to be
exactly
something
something
cheap.
that exists on the market today.
I had seen a demo of an iPhone application where you take a picture of them from a couple different angles, and then it stitches them all together and makes almost sort of like a lenticular image where you can tilt the iPhone.
Fake hologram.
And it's like a fake, it's like a fake hologram. And I think that kind of thing works well on a small screen. It can't work on a big screen, but on a small screen, the user's view is focused.
Well,
they're not going to look at it from the off angle. They're always going to look at it dead on, so you can sort of maybe I'm thinking maybe they do something like that since that won't need any glasses.
Right.
I think that we have confirmed, or at least pretty solid evidence that what they're going to be using is a parallax screen developed by Sharp, which in Japan, for about 4 or 5 years now, they've had these cell phones available that can display images in 3D by using 2 screens and off-centering them to kind of create an illusion in your head, basically, that you're seeing 2 different things. I know there's been a lot of articles that connect Sharp to the device.
So it's kind of like a stereoscope, like a ViewMaster almost.
Almost, yeah.
Except without goggles.
Yeah, and I know that Sharp provided hardware or screens to the initial DS before they were caught in the price fixing scandal.
Yeah, Sharp has been working with Nintendo for a long time. They produced the screens for Game Boy Color, which were the first, color Game Boy screens and all that. And then they were very revolutionary in time because they used reflected light, which at the time, this seemed like a great idea. I don't know if you've ever used a Game Boy Color or even the original Game Boy Advance. But
Oh God.
yeah, you need kind of perfect lighting to use them.
Yeah,
but
you need to play by torchlight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the 3DS is interesting, and I can, knowing something about the corporate structure, I can tell you why it was announced now. It seems like a strange time to throw it out there, but at the end of March is the end of their fiscal year, and that's when Nintendo has to kind of account for where some of their R&D money is gone. That announcement, if you notice, it was at the investor relations part of their website. That announcement was primarily for their investors in Japan. They don't even have investors in America, really, but. That is to let people know that they are releasing something soon, which is important for Nintendo. Nintendo makes money on their hardware, and they don't have a TV division of the company like Sony does. They don't sell Office or Windows to make money that makes up for their loss leader video game sector. They have to make money on everything they do. And so the thing about Nintendo is because they're a hardware maker and they make a lot of their profit on that, when their hardware sales start to go down, they need to very quickly get out the next system. It's not money grabbing as some people think. It's not, oh well, we just tricked you into buying this DSi XL, and so now we're gonna 6 months later we're gonna sell you something new that's even more irresistible. It's not like that. It's that they make more money on hardware than they do on software. So it's interesting because in America it looks really bad because DS sales are still very, very high here. The system's incredibly popular. In Japan, DS sales have been going down for quite a while. And so it's a very, very major concern among Nintendo's investors. They want Nintendo to keep making a lot of money and keep selling a lot of hardware because that's how they make a lot of money. Well, as the DS goes down, Nintendo can announce a couple of games or try to do some gimmicks, release new colors or whatever to boost those sales back up. But those run out pretty quickly. And then they very seriously need to start thinking about what they're doing with the next system, and their investors want to know about it. So that's why it was announced now. That's why it will be out in Japan before the end of this calendar year. I can almost guarantee it. We'll see when it comes out in America.
Yeah,
that's a pretty Nintendo thing too. They have a very strong focus on the Japanese market because that's where all their investors are, and they honestly a lot of the times
that's where
there are people at Nintendo of America that don't learn about things until the same day we do. I wouldn't be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if Reggie didn't find out about the 3DS until the same day that we did.
There was that whole scandal where the guy, the president of Nintendo Europe, didn't know about the DS Lite until it was announced.
Right. Yeah. That's not a scandal. That's just the way the company.
That's just the way it rolls. Welcome to NCL.
Yeah. We move on to the next question because again, we could talk about 3DS for a long time, forever, and we will later this weekend on our other podcast that we do back at the hotel. So
the Drunk Cast.
If you want to hear more about it, subscribe, and we'll talk your ear off about 3DS and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. One more maybe?
One or two more at least.
Yeah.